Hey, my name is Taylor, and today we're talking about mixing together audio for video, so stay tuned. As video content becomes more and more important and more people want to pursue video as a career, knowing little tips and tricks to making your video not just look good, but sound great is super important to pursuing video as a career. While recording your audio well at the source is ultimately key, knowing how to mix your voices, your sound effects, and your music together is ultimately what's going to make your film sound the most professional. When you're editing voices, there's a few things you should look at and keep track of. Does anything need to be repaired, or do you need to replace any of the dialogue? This is a super fun process for me because I'm an audio guy, but it can add a major expense if you're creating a film on your own. If you need to record it on set, if you need to record it in a studio, and matching it up can feel unnatural too. So be aware of what you need to repair. There's a lot of things you can do to repair it afterwards. I use this program called RX and it's amazing. Also, do you need to remove any S's or mouth noise? Because we all know they're super fun to deal with. Or do you have any clothing rustle on your microphones, you know, like this? Or did your mic just get bumped? That's a major issue. So just keep track of those, mark those out with time code, and so you can come back to them later if you're not just editing it right there on the spot. You'll also want to have a plan for how much you want to compress the dialogue. If you're on set, the more you compress your vocals, the more you'll hear that background sound. This is super popular with indie movies. I was just watching Mr. Robot and I really liked how they did this, where everything felt really smashed together and it created a sort of drama. But it doesn't always work for commercials or other things. So have a plan for using compression on your voiceover or for your on-set dialogue. Knowing where you want your vocals to sit in the stereo field is also really important. Do you want the vocals to pan left or right when somebody walks by? Do you want it to fade up and down? Do you need to automate that with keyframes? Or do you let the vocals sit right in the center and just don't worry about it and create that sort of feel? They're all good. It all comes down to taste. So you'll just need to pick which one you like the best. Lastly, you'll want to meter your dialogue so you know you're hitting the right volume levels for your final product. Sound effects and ambience. When you're mixing sound effects and ambience together, it's really important to watch your low end, especially if you have something that's more drama oriented, where you're gonna have huge booms and you're going to have huge claps. Here's an example of a spot I did where I used a lot of booms and explosions, and it was really fun to do.
Explosive armed.
I think you lost the Agent H.
That low end is really important because you want the vocals to still seem warm and natural when you're mixing your dialogue and sound effects together, but you also don't want it to stand in the way. So be sure to EQ your sound effects. You can also de-ess your sound effects if you have a sizzle or some room noise where it's a harsh kind of tone, but you want it to sound that way still. De-essing is a great way to keep room for the VO and the dialogue. Next, you can compress things together. I like to add limiters, so I get a lot of impact, but it adds to that sustain pretty well. I also really like to play with the stereo field in sound effects. I think it's great to be able to spread out your sound effects in your world so it feels more all-encompassing. So know there's tools out there to do that, and also don't forget about metering your sound effects as well, because that will totally blow out your whole audio very quickly and very easily. Lastly is your music track. Now, music is usually a little easier to deal with because it's already been mixed and mastered by the time you're getting it into your video session or you're mixing all your audio together. Still, a lot of music sounds really good because it has a full frequency spectrum. A trick I like to use is to cut out around 200 to 300 and around 800 hertz to about 1.5K in the music, and maybe some around 5. I usually like to cut those out because those frequency ranges compete with the dialogue the most. While this can make your music sound a little bit more dull, ultimately this helps all of your audio meld together better. The other thing great about these EQ curves and carving it out this way is that you can automate these dips and dives to create that volume dip that you want when the vocals come, but ultimately keep the energy and the volume of your music. I really like using this EQ technique to dip the volume of the music instead of actual volume automation because it helps keep the energy of the whole track. You can even break this down to just your center channel so that only in the center of your mix do these frequencies cut. That way, your music can stay the same volume and your dialogue can cut through the center, and same with your sound effects really easily, and you don't lose any energy in your mix. You will still want to automate that volume in certain spots though, because obviously we don't want music running through everything all the time, unless that's the whole vibe of the film. So you'll want to be smart about it. Most people can hear volume changes in increments of 3 decibels. So -3, -6, -12. When you really get into it, you can hear the differences, but the average person won't notice it until it passes a threshold of 3 decibels. So if you're dipping your music or you're dipping sound effects, have those benchmarks in mind. Somebody wants it a little bit down, try to dip it the least amount so you can keep that energy up. I also like to adjust the stereo field of the music sometimes. By spreading the music, you can create more room in the center for the vocals, but it can add weird issues to the music. So be conscious if you do this that you can make more problems. Those are my best tips for mixing audio and video. I will be diving into these subjects a little bit more in depth soon, but I wanted to give you kind of those broad strokes and categories and ways you can manipulate them starting now. As I dive into these subjects more, let me know what problems you run into regularly and what kind of audio things that you find diluting the quality of your overall films. I'd love to talk more. Feel free to reach out to me personally if you have specific questions, but I look forward to next time. Thanks so much. Talk soon.